What happens when we die, and how does the afterlife dovetail with our physical life here on Earth? Today, we're going to discuss that and more on ATP. Stay tuned.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
G'day and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Always a blessing to be with you. Well, we've got quite a party online today on the show. And remember, you're listening to Accentuate the Positive on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM. And we've got a few guests today, but my first guest is Paul King. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Good morning, Karen. Thank you for inviting me on.
Well, Paul's got an amazing story. Let me tell you a little bit about Paul. He is the founder of the Afterlife Convention here in Sydney, Australia, this September 2024, a mammoth endeavour at one of Sydney's biggest venues in one of Australia's biggest cities, which is an indication of how people are awakening everywhere to the truth of their multidimensional reality. From an early age, Paul viewed the world through rose-coloured glasses, fearlessly pursuing his dreams and shaping life on his terms. A self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie, his youthful passion centred around surfing, as many people do who live on the coast of Australia. Everything changed after his first surfing holiday in Indonesia, where he made a bold decision to sell everything and relocate to Bali, chasing the opportunity to surf some of the world's most perfect waves. He founded a surf tour enterprise, guiding surfers from around the world to some of the most remote regions and islands of Indonesia for over 20 years. Bali became his sanctuary, where he developed a deep connection with its people and the profound teaching of Hinduism, embracing a spiritual outlook he believed in a greater purpose beyond this earthly existence. The impact, though, of September 11 dealt a crushing blow to several of Paul's ventures, facing their closure and prompting him to return to Australia, down under. And the passing of his father in 2019 brought a noticeable shift in his perspective. Around 2021, Paul crossed paths with Mirella Curtale, an amazing psychic medium whose influence proved transformative. Mirella is also going to join us today. Immersing himself in her psychic circle, Paul embarked on an intensive spiritual journey that unearthed profound revelations. Now, after 6 decades on this planet, Paul says he's finally grasped his true calling and his life's purpose. And he has a more understanding of intuition has deepened and his spiritual connection. And because he was initially skeptical of receiving messages from spirit, Paul struggled to discern their origin, but the messages persisted, compelling Paul to put together the Afterlife Convention this September, aimed at spiritual healing and spiritual education. His mission is to embrace wholeheartedly and rekindled his passion and zest for life. Woohoo, Paul. Quite a bio.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I've had an interesting existence, actually.
You have. It sounds beautiful living in Bali. As I was telling you, I was talking to a friend last night who's putting on a festival in Bali, and he's like, come to Bali and do this festival with me. Because there's so many conscious people in Bali doing amazing things. Yeah, it's an incredible place, Bali.
Yeah, Bali's a very, very spiritual place, and it's the only place like it in Indonesia. There's over 13,000 islands in Indonesia, and Bali's the only Hindu island.
Yeah, the rest is Muslim. Yeah. So tell us about this awakening. You said that it's only happened in the last couple of years, this deepening of your connection to spirit and who we are beyond this world.
Sure. So it was after my father passed, and I was just sort of watching some shows on cable TV, and I started watching some shows on mediumship, and connecting mediums, connecting people with spirit. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. I wonder if there's any mediums that are nearby me. And so I Googled mediums in the local area, and a number of names popped up. And so I was searching through these different names. And for some reason, I kept getting drawn back to Mirella Curtale. And she was actually just down the road from me. And so I thought, I'll give her a call and see if she has any vacancy. So I gave her a call, and she said, yeah, look, I've got a vacancy tomorrow. I've just had a cancellation. Would you like that? And I went, sure. So I turned up the next day, not actually expecting anything. I didn't know what to expect at all. And I went in there, and Mirella connected me with my mother and my father and a number of friends who have passed. And I just couldn't believe it. The information that she was passing on to me was so accurate and so profound, and moving, that when I walked outside, I just went like, what happened? What? I couldn't believe the effect that it actually had on me, but it's all true. It really is true. And so 2 weeks later, I booked another sort of reading with Mirella. And this time I recorded it, because last time there was so much information that it sort of went in one ear and out the other. And when I walked out, I was sort of couldn't recall it. And when I actually recorded it, the accuracy of the information was just amazing. Stories from my childhood, a friend that had committed suicide that I'd always felt guilt for, that I wasn't there, came through and said, look, there was nothing I could have done to have helped him, that this is something that he'd made up his mind to do. And it released such a burden from me that I've been carrying for 10 or 15 years. And I was just thinking of him walking in going, Steve, if you're there, come through. And he did. And just that thought that was able to connect to spirit was just life-changing. So I joined Mirella's psychic circle to increase my intuition, and all the people that are in the circle were just so amazing and friendly and spiritual and kind, and it generated a new community for me. And so this sort of was the start of the journey. So a number, probably maybe a year passed, maybe even less than that. I started receiving messages that I had to run the Afterlife convention. And at first I thought I was just dreaming, but these messages kept persisting. And so I spoke to a friend of mine and said, look, I'm getting these messages. He was attending the circle with me. Do you think we should run this Afterlife convention? He said, let's meet with Mirella and see what she thinks. So we met with Mirella and we told her what it was all about, and she wholeheartedly agreed to run this event. And then that was the start of the Afterlife convention. We looked at the business name, it was there, the website address was there, everything was just lined up for us right from the beginning to begin this journey.
My mic is muted. I was going to say, you've gone in feet first with a bang, because you've hired one of Sydney's biggest venues. So it's not like you're having a little gathering of a half a dozen people or 20 people or 30 people. You're expecting thousands of people to come through. Why did you start so big? Why didn't you start smaller and grow?
The message I received was that this is for the public. It's for humanity. It's something that has to happen, and that what we need to do is educate people on spirituality and all the different aspects of spirituality, and start them on their own journey. Don't get them just ringing psychics to get messages or things like. Start their own spiritual journey. There's so many people that are hurting from the loss of a loved one, like, even losing my father at my older age was still painful for me. And I still remember the grief experience when I lost my mother sort of 30 years before. And so some people never get over grief, and connecting with a medium or realizing that the soul lives on eternally and that our loved ones are always with us is such a healing process. And so to be able to start to help people get onto this journey is so important. And so we felt we have to go big. We have to give it to the whole of Sydney to start, and we'll go from there.
Well, I congratulate you on that, because I think the time is ripe. I mean, as I said to you 10 years ago, we put on a Peace Day festival. I thought peace would be palatable to the mainstream, and we wanted to go big too, but it was so hard to get people interested. It was so hard to get people interested. But years ago, when I asked my guides, you know, what is the thing that causes the most pain on earth, and how can I address that? Because I knew I was here to change the world in my small way. And they said, your concept of death, you don't understand what death is, and this causes the most pain in the human society, in the human mind, because you go through this loss process and this grieving process. And so mediumship became so big because people didn't want to feel that loss of a loved one, and they wanted to reach out to their loved ones in another room or in another neighborhood or another dimension through a medium. But I think you're right, Paul. I think that the day of the medium is shifting, and we have to all now understand that we can have our own access. And the mediums are not just there to read for us, but to teach us how we can gain that same access.
Certainly. I still think it's a great thing for people to actually see a medium. If you haven't seen a medium, there's nothing like seeing a medium who's good and getting the confirmation that you need to hear, because once you believe, then it opens up such a wealth of information that you can actually start to look into. But the profound revelations that you get from a medium, you can watch it on TV, you can see it on shows, but when you experience it yourself, it is so incredibly life altering. You know, my whole life has changed from that point on. My whole direction in life has changed, and it's not just a mental change too. There's a physical change that occurs with it. And, you know, once you start realizing all the synchronicities in life and the messages that we're constantly receiving, you know, it makes life so much more beautiful.
Absolutely. When did you know that the thoughts in your head was guidance and not just you imagining or creating or dreaming? When did you know that it, like, what was the point where you knew, hang on, is this a message from spirit, or is this just me having just a fantasy? Like, when did you know?
When I started answering my own questions, like I would sort of say, who is this? And I would say to me, or the voice would say to me, you know who it is, or and you know, why do I have to do this now? And it's not always about you. Like I'd ask questions and I actually got answers that I wasn't expecting. And so then I started to realize that it's not me. It could be my higher self, which I think still connected to the other side that was talking to me. And so it was just that the messages, they always occur early in the morning, like between 2 and 4 o'clock is usually my greatest sort of period where I get these messages, and they're profound. You know, they're things that I may not even be thinking of or aware of, and then I wake up and I remember them, like, which is different to sort of dreaming. And and so then I just started realizing that, okay, I'm connecting to something more than me.
Yeah. When I was 16, my mother died, and I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. And she used to come to me in dreams over and over and over again and tell me she wasn't dead. Yeah. And when I was in those dreams, I was in an astral reality that felt as real as this reality. So I actually didn't know I was dreaming. And so I felt like she had, you know, done an Elvis, sort of like she'd pretended she died and she'd gone to live in Queensland. You know, people say he pretended he died. But and I used to get so angry at her. I'm like, if you're not dead, where the hell have you been?
Yeah.
Like, why would you be with me? And then I'd wake up in the morning in another reality and I'd be like, oh, hang on. In this reality, she's dead, and in that reality, she's not. And I just took me the longest time to work it out. But as I say, that was like 40 years ago. And now we've got the internet, we've got all these amazing healers and teachers and shows and movies and that can help us sort all this stuff out. It's so exciting. Really.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the same thing happened to me one time when my mother came through, and I looked at her and I went, "You're not dead. Like, you're here. I can't believe that I'm seeing you." And I hugged her, and it was just an amazing experience. And later when I woke up, I went, "Wow, that was just incredible," because I was actually with her.
Yes.
Like, and I felt her, and the feeling is just incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a million stories too, but one of my best friends committed suicide in her 30s, which pissed me off something terrible. She was my best friend at the time, just adored her, but she was one of the ones that gave me so many lessons about who we are beyond this world, that we are real. And I remember hugging her in another dimension. I remember going to sleep and having memory of falling asleep in my physical body and waking up in my astral body. And she'd be sitting on the bed waiting for me, waiting for me to fall asleep so I could be awake with her. And I remember hugging her and feeling the hardness of her body, because I knew I wasn't in a physical body. Yeah. So I'm expecting her to be more see-through, I guess, like a ghost. And I'm like, how come I can feel you physically? I remember scratching my head going, how come this is happening? Because I knew I wasn't on Earth. Yeah, and so that reality can be as real and as physically real as this reality in many ways. In many ways, yeah.
Yeah. So it raises the issue of what is the afterlife? We all talk about it, and everybody wants to know, what is the afterlife? And so that's when my journey really started, because I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know, understand consciousness or past lives or near-death experiences or so many different things. And once you start falling down this rabbit hole, which is not really a rabbit, it's more like the Grand Canyon, it just opens up so many interesting avenues of investigation. But then, like when you said before, how do you know what they're saying is true, or that you are connecting with spirit, or that they're talking about and so then I started looking at, okay, what scientific evidence is there to support a lot of these stories? And then you start seeing, videos of trauma surgeons, that people die on the operating table that are connected to all the equipment, and they're physically dead. They've got no heartbeat. They're not breathing. They've got no brainwaves. Yet they experience these near-death experiences over and over again. They've witnessed it in patients for 20 years, and so there's actual scientific evidence to support a lot of the concepts of what the actual afterlife is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much literature and movies and evidence out there now. But we've got a few people online today. So would you like to introduce Mirella?
Sure. So Mirella started me on this whole journey. She's an amazing medium. So I'll hand this over to Mirella Curtale to have a bit of a chat to you.
Hello. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Mirella. Welcome. It's so great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So as we know, Mirella is an amazing medium, and you were a registered nurse for 25 years.
25 years.
Yeah, and it was at 4 that you realized that you had this experience. Let's hear a little bit of your story.
Well, my earliest memory is from the age of 4, and like a lot of kids, I was frightened to get up in the night to use the bathroom, and you'd often call out for mum, and she'd take me. But one particular night, mum didn't come, as a lot of parents do. She was probably thinking, go back to sleep. She'll forget about it. So I remember this very, very vividly. It was incredibly real. I was calling my mum to use the bathroom. She didn't come, and a voice said to me, "I will take you." And as I heard that voice, there was a real sense of love and peace and calm. And a man's hand appeared and walked me up the hallway to the bathroom, waited outside the door, and walked me back to bed.
Wow.
And I know this is real because I repeated this almost every night until I was 13 years old.
Wow.
And that man was Jesus. And I held Jesus's right hand, and I knew this as Jesus. And Jesus has come to me many times through my life. So repeatedly up to the age of sort of 13-ish, this was a sort of a ritual for me. I only ever had to ask, excuse me, can you walk with me? And that was my experience. So it definitely happened before school. So I know it was around the age of 4. So yeah.
Jesus took me to the loo.
Jesus took me to the loo. Absolutely. Which freaked my mother out, I'll tell you a true story. I grew up in an Italian Catholic, devout Catholic home. My mother was very freaked out that around this and that I was talking to dead people, and I knew lots of things as a little person. True story, she took me to the parish priest here in Sydney for an exorcism when I was 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'll tell you, nobody's head spun around. It was none of that. And the only memory I have of that was of this very tall priest who put his hand on my head, and I remember him smiling at my mother. So I'm not sure what the exchange was, but she tells me, yes, she was really, really scared, frightened that I was speaking to dead people. And so, yeah, that's, the exorcism was her response to that.
Well, that was obviously a couple of years ago, but that still exists. I've got a client in the States. Shirley says, wow. Yeah, I know. Wow. I know. I agree, Shirley. I've got a client in the States who's an amazing psychic, and she has been for 20 years. And she's been doing readings, but she's been in the closet because she lives in the Bible Belt. And everyone is sort of like into the whole Christian things, and they think that psychic ability is from the devil, or you're possessed, or you've got evil demons. So she keeps it really on the down low. And then she met me, and I'm like, girl, you got to get out there, because she's amazing. And so I'm coaching her to get out there, get out of the spiritual closet. I'm
still team Jesus. When I do my healings, I'm a healer, and Jesus often comes in to assist with healing. So exactly. I combine my spirituality in that way. So for me, that's my chosen connection to source is I work with Jesus. So
yeah. Hi, Sun Dragon, who's saying hello. I'd love to know. So you met Paul, and he had some readings and blew his mind, and then he's guided to put on a convention about the afterlife to like thousands of people in Sydney. What were the guides saying to you about this? Like, what's happening? What's happening in the consciousness of the world and Sydney and the humanity that is able to support this sort of event?
Really interestingly, I knew it was time. I knew that it was time for this to be bigger. I always prayed that how can we affect more people? How can we nurture more people? Yeah. How can we be more present for people and allow people to find their own divinity and find their own way? And at the risk of putting myself out of business, understanding that they don't actually need mediums, that we are all innately intuitive. I just say it's your natural factory default setting is your intuition. Absolutely. So when Paul came to me with this idea, first thing I thought he was nuts, because it was such a large scale. I thought, God, this man doesn't do anything on a small scale. He's like big. But I had this trust in Paul. I really had this trust that he was divinely guided to do this. And I sat with my own guides, and I had a really, really interesting experience where I asked my spiritual team to let me know if this was the right thing. Yep. And they surrounded me with the terracotta soldiers with the imperial warriors.
Wow.
And they said to me that this event is protected, this event is going to be elevated, and that this event was necessary. And they moved around me like the terracotta soldiers, where I actually saw this orange dust come up. And not only I saw it, my eldest daughter, who is scared of this world, scared of her spiritual connection, actually visibly saw orange dust come up from the imperial terracotta soldiers, and they were showing me that this event needed to take place. So I just jumped in. At that point, I kind of thought, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I to tell you the truth, I always saw this happening. I attempted it 10 years ago and lost lots of money, but had a really good time, met a lot of amazing people, but kept it more on the, you know, like, as I was saying, the conscious community, about dancing and buying stuff and breath work and meditation, not really bringing the whole mediumship. There were mediums and healers there, but focusing on that 10 years ago. But I saw this happening too. I knew that Sydney, you know, Australia's biggest city would have big events like this. And when I saw it, I'm like, oh, it's happening. Yeah, I was yeah.
Karen, it wasn't just about the afterlife. It was this concept of after this life. And I think you alluded to this earlier, in that the biggest myth that I think we fall into is that there is actually death.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, because you know, we are eternal. And I think with the clients that I sit with, that's the thing that I try and convey the most, is that love lives on. We never die. Like, we are just these eternal beings. And just a little example, I was at a funeral not so long ago of a relative, and people were grieving, and my daughter said to me, could you be a bit more grievy? And I was like, oh, and I realized that I was smiling, because we have such a, once you know the joy and the beauty, that life is eternal, you really just view death and grief in a different lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I thought there were so many people who were so stricken with grief.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, grief for some people, I mean, it changes them. It's profoundly changing. And I think if they can have some understanding of how, when you lose someone, it can be the source of your joy, not necessarily the source of your pain, that just is really going to help people live their best life in this lifetime.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I put out a book, I don't know how many years ago, a few years ago, called Awakened by Death. And I initially had the name Surviving Death. And then what's her name put out a book called Surviving Death the same year. And then she put out the Netflix series called Surviving Death. I know Craig will probably know. Craig and Julie, do you know that? Anyway, and we'll get Craig on soon. And but the guy I was collaborating with said, you can't call it the same name. And Sandra Champlain, who has a podcast show called We Don't Die, I said, right, I'm just going to call it Death. And she's like, you can't just call it Death. And she gave me the name Awakened by Death. And I thought, that is perfect. Because like my guide said to me, I said, what causes the most pain on this planet? And they said, your idea of death, you don't understand it.
Yes.
But if you use your grief to like look within, then you awaken to who you are beyond it. And so the name Awaken, so it's a compilation of 12 people's stories. People have had NDEs and people that have had a death of a loved one. Like one of the writers was her child was killed in the Sandy Hook shooting. And anyway, I could go on and on and on. But, you know, I'd love you to tell the story about the kings and angels, and we'll bring on Mary.
So when Paul and I were, you know, now collaborating to, you know, at the genesis of this thing and to how we're going to birth this afterlife convention, my guide said to me, Mirella, there will be kings and angels. And I really didn't understand that at the time. And as you might know, sometimes it's a little cryptic. We don't the pieces don't always fit together till later. So I thought, okay, kings and angels. And as our team came together, we have Paul King, Taylor King, Mary King, Florence King, Tara King. The only two are related are Paul and Taylor. That's Paul's daughter. And we have Ezio De Angelis of the Angels. So there was my 5 kings and angels. And I thought, wow, Spirit were really giving me the heads up around the kings and angels. So I still am amazed. Doesn't matter how long you do this work, it still fills you with awe and wonder every time something happens that is so incredible.
I know Deepak Chopra would call it synchro destiny. And I was saying to people, to everyone online before we went live, that I was talking to a friend who puts on festivals here, and he's now collaborating with Psychedelic Journeys with a guy who puts on festivals and information about psychedelic journeys and, you know, the power of the mind and stuff like that. And he's another king.
Wow. So there you go. Kings have it.
And I believe that we all should collaborate and get together and, you know, make this a collaborative journey that everybody should be helping to promote everybody else. I've been doing it on radio for years. Yeah. And but I'd love to bring Paul back on camera, and I'd love to introduce Mary. Mary is going to be one of the healers and psychics that will be attending and speaking. Are you speaking, Mary, at the conference? Oh, we need to unmute you. There you go. There you go.
Got me now?
Yeah, we got you. Hi, Mary. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Are you going to be speaking at the conference?
I am. I'm excited to be speaking at the conference. Yeah, so at this stage, I'll be speaking about our experience as children with death and how children do see spirit. It can be very daunting for parents when you have that child like Mirella or myself where we could see spirit. And in Mirella's case, you know, she was taken to an exorcist. I was really lucky. I came from that really strict Catholic family, but my grandmother was also an incredible psychic. So she knew that what I was seeing was normal. But for most people, they don't know that. So parents come in with their children in panic and say, what is my child seeing? You know, it can be really, really scary.
Yeah. But I think, like Mirella, you see it as I'm somebody that tries to make psychic ability really normal, because I wasn't psychic as a child that I remember. I was probably, I knew what people felt, but I didn't see ghosts or dead people that I remember. As I said, I was dreaming about Mum, and she kept telling me she wasn't dead. But I wanted to know what psychic ability was. And when I developed it, I just thought, God, this is easy. And then I realized that everyone's doing it all the time.
Absolutely. All the time.
All the time. And I read in the Seth books, do you know the Seth books, channeled information from the 60s, Jane Roberts, do you know the Seth book? Anyway,
no, I don't.
They came before the Abraham teachings Esther and Jerry were. So in the Seth book, Seth says that you humans, you're all communicating telepathically all the time on a subconscious level. You couldn't drive on your roads if you were not. And I'm like, oh, wow, you know, like, so I really like to normalize this and make it so people understand that you are psychic and intuitive, and you can speak to your dead relatives, loved ones, whoever, and even be telepathic. You just have to trust that. It's like anything you create. If you want to create an experience, you have to believe it and line up with it. And you're not special or gifted. You know, everyone's always saying you have the gift.
Yes, correct.
Anyway.
We all have it.
Absolutely.
And it presents in different ways. And you asked Paul a really good question. How do you know the difference between your imagination and that psychic information? And it's the peace that it gives you. When you get that message, you initially feel a peace with it. It doesn't leave you feeling, you know, anxious or unsettled. You might sort of get that way if you think about it afterward. But in that moment, it's just peace. And, you know, spirit will speak to you like your thoughts in your own head. Sometimes you go to do something and you don't realize that's your mum telling you veer to the left or stop here, or there's a speed camera up there, don't speed. You think it's your own thoughts. So they are constantly in communion with us through our own thoughts. It's incredible.
Yeah, I know. It's beautiful and fun. I was hanging out with a couple of girlfriends on the weekend, and we're all psychic and we're all receiving messages. And it's like the three of us. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Such a high vibration.
Such a high vibe, I just want to remind people that you're listening to Accentuate the Positive Media with Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM. We're streaming across America and Canada. We're streaming through radio and internet radio. We're all over Facebook and We're on 3 YouTube channels and several Facebook platforms. We're on X and we're on Rumble. We're getting it out there. But yeah, so we've got a bit of a party online today. And Paul, do you want to talk about how Craig McMahon, or Craig
Sure.
McMahon, hopefully I pronounced that right, influenced you on your journey?
Yeah, so Craig has a business, Life to Afterlife, and has produced a lot of movies in relation to near-death experiences, mediums, spirituality. Julie had an incredible story on there about the loss of her son, and I started watching his films, and they were so influential to me. Like, it just the reconfirmation of sort of what I felt was going on, and just seeing it from so many different sources, and the way that Craig put together these documentaries, was, he's a leader sort of in this field, and it was just so amazing. Like, and I've recommended his work to so many different people, and everyone has said the same thing to me, like, thank you so much for putting me on this journey, because it starts the seeds in your mind that start to grow, and then you can start looking into your own spirituality and start digging deeper into where you can go with all this. So thank you, Craig and Julie. Like, I'm eternally grateful for the work that you've done and where you're going with all this, and we'll be, showing a lot of your material at our convention in Sydney in September, which we're hoping people will check out and, find out more about, both of you.
And welcome to the show, Craig and Julie. Craig and Julie are in the States. Do you want to tell people where you are and what you're up to?
Well, we're in North Carolina, and we've built a homestead out in the wilderness.
Nice. Look at that. Woohoo! Beautiful.
We lived in the city, and so now it's time for us to get with Gaia, and to connect. And with all that peace, we are able to use our own mediumship to connect to spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And Craig has been, a bit of your bio here. You've been a TV host, afterlife expert, inventor of Spirit Radio, and started your career in 2004 producing movie for Lionsgate, and later moved to producing for Weinstein and international films with Paramount Pictures. So you've been in the movie industry, and he's the inventor of Spirit Radio and the sound bank tools to use to communicate with spirit. So it's interesting because Paul was telling me, have you heard of this guy? And the name didn't ring a bell. And then I looked at him, I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen this guy on YouTube. Yeah, I've checked out all his stuff. Because you're using some contraption and spirits like EVPs. I've had so many EVPs on my shows. We did a channeling for Prince, and Prince came through on an EVP. It was fantastic after Prince died. So you're kind of using that same technology to have spirit talk physically so that we can physically hear it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, actually, Nikola Tesla was the one that actually started this this communication, and he shelved it because he felt that it was a little bit, for the time, to be a little bit hard for people to grasp onto. So he shelved it. And then later on, people continued to do more and more of it. And so I actually, believe it or not, this is the strangest thing. Charlie Chaplin, I have no idea. I don't watch his movies. He came to me and said, you can communicate with the spirit world using communication through devices. And so a team was put together. Nikola Tesla came involved. Albert Einstein came. And of course, Archangel Michael, to kind of keep an eye on things. And there's a group of these gurus that, have kind of helped assist me to create this this verbal communication where people can actually hear what Jesus is actually saying. what Buddha is actually saying. And you mentioned Prince. I actually did have a conversation with Prince, John Lennon, Princess Diana. I've had a lot of communication with all different, like Robin Williams was the funniest one. He's Craig, death.
What did you say that again? He said what? Say that again.
There
I lost
is no
it.
death.
There is no death. Yeah,
There's
yeah,
no death.
yeah.
You know, and so Albert Einstein was actually teaching me how to connect to the infinite intelligence. And of course, Jesus was interesting. I spent 2 weeks with Jesus prior to the actual communication, which is on our YouTube channel. I don't know if you put it in the description. And he said, I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to give you the questions to ask me. So it wasn't really my interview. It was, these are the questions that he wanted people to understand. And it was really, at first I was a little nervous about, communicating with Jesus. But Archangel Michael really pushed me to go ahead with communicating. With such masters,
Yeah. Look, at the time that I was channeling Prince, I was running a conscious music radio show, online radio, and we would play conscious music and put on shows that talked about kirtan and talked about spirituality and all different things. It's not there anymore. But yeah, Prince had died, and we're going to talk about Prince's life and channel Prince. And it's really interesting when you channel rock stars, famous people, right? Do you get a lot of skepticism? Like, do people say, oh, you're just wishing you could speak to, Jesus or Prince? Or...
Yeah, that's really true. There's a lot of controversy around Kurt Cobain. Okay. And everyone, there's a lot of people that are convinced that his wife killed him and put a hit out on him and all this stuff. Wow. And he's just like, Craig, I loved my wife. I don't know what this is all about. And it's just, I'm going to get a lot of heat for it because there's a lot of people that want to subscribe to these controversies. Chester Bennington was murdered by I don't know anything about all this stuff. I just go by what they tell me. And so yeah, it can be a little it's like they think it's me. They think I'm front loading it. They think I'm talking, and I'm just the one creating the platform for them to speak. And so yeah, but like with John Lennon, what I thought was so this is a thing I keep hearing over and over with all the people that have transitioned. They're so excited when they pass, and I don't want to encourage people to die, but they are just so elated. I said, John, you were shot cold, right out of your apartment. He goes, are you kidding me? I was flying over New York. I was like at Disneyland. I was in such a great place, and it's just like, if people could only understand, we are here to learn. We're here to experience. We're here to get rid of this thing called karma and to be creators of our manifesting of things. And we spend so much time being afraid of death. And it's yes, of course it's home, but it's, for me, it is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And I've had a lot of people transition in my life. At 9 years old, I had a brother in a car accident. He died. Then shortly after, my another brother committed suicide, and then both parents transitioned. And so it's been, I will get with them later. I'm here to do, and so it's kind of like what Julie and I have been kind of focusing on is maintaining light, and there's so much stuff going on out in the world that we are light holders, and we're actually a lighthouse. So we're basically putting out this love, putting out this energy of to eliminate any evil, any fear, any despair that people may have, and that's what our job is here. to do is to spread love, to spread compassion, empathy. We're working on charity to this such a degree, and that's been something that Jesus has been helping us with, is this charity thing, and it's just been a journey for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the thing about the celebrity thing is that it creates a lot of skepticism, but it also creates a lot of attention, because people are like, I want to know what John Lennon thought when he died. And, so it has a sort of the two double-bladed sword. But Julie, I'd love to hear from you. What's your participation in all of this?
Well, I had a son at the age of 19 transition suddenly, and it took my transcendence happened the minute that I saw him without any life in his body. And I had such a different experience than the typical human experience, I guess, or the grief experience. And so I definitely just got cascaded into this new version of there is no death through his death, the most tragic experience one can experience, the death of a child. And my life has, to what you had said earlier, has unfolded into this beautiful story on the other side of that. I mean, I met Craig, we got married, like within 3 months, we were dating, and my life just changed, because what happened with his death is he came to me 3 days after he passed, through a psychic. She called me up. It was a friend of mine, and said a psychic needed to talk to me. And he told me, Mom, I'm here. There, he kept saying to me, it's my fault. Don't worry. I'm okay. So I had that experience, and that followed the time that I saw him. My heart was opened instead of the heart closing. When I saw him, I felt tremendous gratitude. And what that did for me was put me into this state of grace that was so unconditional loving that I almost had a near-death experience, if you will, to follow him because of my love for him and not my separation. So it was so instant for me that I just know that he is okay. And so I went through the human experience of death. The body feels the change in of reality, and that I couldn't escape. I cried and felt sadness, but my spirituality and my belief in the afterlife was lit up. And so I just decided to follow him, follow the love, follow the soul. And what that did was, spirit comes front and center. Just like the mediums get that contact. I spoke with the medium, but then I soon wanted to be the medium. So all of those came online. I call it the first 6 months that they transition, that you have this beautiful period of being so open, so distant from your conditioning and your habits, and all the things that life was mundane about is gone in an instant. So you can elevate that. Like you said, awakening during death. If you stay open to the love during the grief process, because I don't agree with the grief process. So I don't think that depression, anger, guilt, and then final acceptance. I know everyone has their own journey, and I respect that, but I think that you should start with acceptance and love. And I think you should follow your heart, because there's these bonds that are created in a lifetime that are unbreakable. That's the soul. They're unbreakable bonds that are created through love. And when those are built, those beautiful golden bonds, they just tether you. They don't separate you through death. They tether you to those that are watching and talking to you. Just like you said, they do talk to you. They guide you. They're there. You just need to tune into it, turn in that intuition, and all of a sudden the language opens up that they have. You just learn to speak the spiritual language. The plane of the phenomenon becomes your soul language, and then you're a better human because of it. You're more embodied in spirit, and you become more generous, more giving, more loving, more kind, through the death of a loved one when you believe there is no death. So, Paul,
Absolutely.
I commend you for putting on this conference, because it is needed, and it should be excited that we are all at a point that it's collaborating so easily and so big for you, because it's beautiful. It's beautiful that we're closing the gap of life and death to life as an experience to be lived fully.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I call grief a deep dive into your subconscious programming, because when you hit that feeling of loss, that feeling of separation from one that you loved, you experience the feeling of separation from you to your source, from you to your higher self. And then you experience the thought forms and conditioned belief patterns that keep you feeling separate from love, separate from getting what you want, separate from money, separate from health. Like separation is something that we explore in this third dimensional reality. And yet when we reconnect and we find unity with love and with spirit and with ourselves, we can really play here on earth, and enjoy it and be the light, as you talk about, like be the light for others. All right. I'm just going to remind people again that you are listening to Accentuate the Positive Media with Karen Swain. We're talking about the afterlife, and we're going to discuss what happens when you die. I'm going to put that out to all of you. And how does knowing that, the afterlife dovetail, we have discussed that a lot, with who we are in our physical life. You're listening to us on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how it all dovetails with our Galactic Star Nation family and friends in spirit and in other dimensions on 107.7 and 105.3 FM. So who wants to answer what happens when you die, which is a question, apparently it's really high ranking on Google. People put in, what happens when you die? Who wants to go first?
Mary, you've had some NDEs
Mary.
coming from
Mary.
I think one of the most comforting experiences from my own experiences and what I see in other people is that you never, ever go alone. Even if you pass suddenly, quickly, at your own hand, no matter what the circumstance, somebody always comes to take you. And it's either a loved one from spirit, it's an angel, it's an ascended master like Jesus or Our Lady or Buddha. So you never go on your own. So in that moment that you pass, no matter how quick or slow it is, you get this lack of fear. You are not scared to cross over. And everyone talks about this tunnel with light. And it's not like that. There's no tunnel. Both times I passed, I saw this blinding light. And when you pass, that is God's face. You don't actually get to see his face even when you're in heaven. But it's not blinding like you can't see. It's like a warm sun. And it's like you walk through it and you just feel this embodiment of love. And then you're in this place where it's really bizarre. You actually feel like you're still alive, but it's beautiful. It's like, imagine like a tropical village or like a mountain village all crossed in one. It is just beautiful. And you're surrounded by the people you love. I think one of the hardest concepts for people to understand is that there is absolutely no time in heaven. So we don't have time like we have here. And I think that scares some people. It's like, well, how do you spend all eternity there? Well, you have no concept of time. So it's quite easy to do that. And the other thing is we have two parts of us that I think people struggle with as well. So you have your spirit and your soul, which are two distinctly different things. So your soul reincarnates straight away. It goes somewhere else. But your spirit is the part that stays in heaven. And that's the part that we can speak to as mediums, or just as all of us wanting to connect with our loved ones. So it's really, even when I was passed, I felt like I was there for hours and I was out for, a very short time. I got to spend time with my loved ones, with the baby I lost, and then I knew I had to come what I had to do. But when I came back, it's like I was gone for seconds.
Yeah, you froze for just a minute. We're having fun with the
Sorry,
internet
I think I've lost you
today.
there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Everyone's internet's a little blurry. Maybe it's
Well,
my
blame
internet.
spirit. It's spirit. Oh, I
Yeah.
think spirit are butting in. They want their say too.
Yeah, we've got a crowd here, haven't we? All those mediums, we've got a crowd.
That's it. We've brought our mob with us. That's
We
it.
brought our
And
mob
that's
with
the
us.
thing.
Mary, I
thing.
call
They're
my guides.
always with you. Yeah.
I call my guides very reverently the mob, and I love that you said
I
we've
love
got our
that.
mob with us.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. You got to have
because
fun with it.
all the Americans are like,
Yeah.
"You're what? You're mob? What are you talking about?" Because it's such an Aussie word, isn't it? The Indigenous call
Yeah.
their family their
No,
mob, their
mob.
Indigenous
Yeah.
family. Yeah, yeah.
Sounds a bit
But
gangster.
do you think that it's individual process for each individual, just like life is individual, so is death, and that there isn't
Yes.
one set of experiences for everybody, that everyone has a different experience?
Absolutely, because it depends on, I suppose, what you're going to do when you come back here. When
Yeah,
you go that final time, that will be that warm, comforting experience. But depending on what you have to do back here, it may differ a little bit for you. And I think that's why near-death experiences differ for people. It
yeah,
depends on what your role is. And let's say, you know, you try to take your own life and that experience is too comfortable and that's not your path. They're not going to make it so comfortable that you want to go back there, because it's exactly what Craig and Julie are saying. It's so beautiful. You do not want to come back. I didn't want to come back. If I didn't have kids here, there is no way I would come back.
Well,
So I
maybe
think the
there's a way you'd come back.
experience, oh, look, I don't know. It's honestly, it's so the peace and the beauty there. No one is unhappy there. And I think, you know,
Yeah,
Julie describes that great when she says, you know, she knows her son is okay.
yeah,
Yeah, never want to come back. So I think the experience is tailored to make sure that you come back.
yeah,
So I think,
yeah.
yeah.
The
So
first
there's
book I
something
put
in
out
that.
The first book
Sorry.
I put out was called Return to Love, and it's again about
Yeah.
it's about my experience with the afterlife and other people's experience. But the meaning of Return to Love is that, you know, when you die, you return to life, to love,
Yeah.
but you
You
don't
do.
have to die to get there. I mean, that's the
No.
message of the book, we come from these realms of pure positive energy, from
Yeah.
unimaginable bliss, from, you know, from without adjective, without adverb, like we can't describe it. But can
Yeah.
we find that same vibration while we're still incarnated in like what can we think
Absolutely.
about? What can we do that lights us up, turns us on, you know, makes us ecstatic and loving and feel connected? Anyone got like, what
Exactly.
can we do? Because I know in Paul's bio he says doing this has it's lit a flame under you, hasn't it, Paul?
Oh, 100%. You know, like once you realize this and you start looking into the whole spirituality side of things, that there's such a joy and peace, love, and your whole attitude changes, and the energy that you feel from people, the people that you associate with, and everything else. It's just such an amazing journey. It changes the rest of your life and prepares you for a greater journey ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
And
one of the other things.
sorry.
Sorry.
I was
No, I was
just going to
gonna
say, while we're looking at the afterlife and our spiritual journey, and everybody's so keen to explore what is not known, I think we have to honor the human journey as well. So, you know, human journey, spiritual journey, we walk with 2 feet. And I think finding your bliss and finding your joy in this lifetime is really key in living a really fulfilled
Yes.
life. Not all just the spiritual journey. We have to really honor this lifetime as well. So I think that's something really important. And Paul has
Very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even raising your vibration here can affect your family and connections on the other side. Like we have a mission here that we were supposed to be doing, and when you realize what that is and you start to live authentically, it's greater than you. It's bigger. It's part of the universal consciousness, I guess. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. In talking about what happens when we die, and you talked about the white light, you saw the white light, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Because I've had plenty of people on the show that have had near-death experiences that haven't experienced the white light. One of them is Natalie Sudman. Has anyone heard of Natalie Sudman? She's an American. She wrote a book called The Something of Impossible Things. Anyway, fabulous book, amazing. She had an incredible near-death experience. And she was in a bomb blast in Iraq during the war. And she found herself 1 minute in the truck and the next minute standing on a stage talking to thousands of beings in the afterlife, downloading information from Earth. and there was no white light, and she went through the review and the guides and all that sort of thing, but no white light. Who wants to answer this? What do you think the white light is?
The white light is God, and it is simply where heaven there is different levels, if that makes any sense, and they're all levels of peace. And because she was in an incident which was quite traumatic, where a lot of people impacted and there's a lot of pain, a lot of death around her, as she's passed, accessed a level where there is a lot going on there, and she hasn't quite got to that bit where she's gone further. It's like just going further along in the journey. So the first experience I had when I first...
Oh, we lost her. She jumped off. She was. I'll get Mary back on the show. She can share her experiences. But yeah, I was having a chat with my guides last night about healing, and a lot of people talk about when they cross over, they go through this washing, this sort of light energy that washes us of all our fear and all our density and all our conditioned thought forms, and we just release all the fear so that we can acclimate back into that pure positive energy and be a vibrational match to the vibration of the afterlife, or people call it heaven. And I'm like, that is so cool. So where is the whitewashing, the light washing? Can we get into a light and wash ourselves of all our fear? Like I was chatting to the guides yesterday about it, like, how come there isn't that on Earth? And I guess that Earth is about, being inside density to work on how that evolves our soul and how we can learn from it rather than just get rid of it. What do you think, Mirella?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I agree with you. I don't think you need to have the near-death experience to experience what is pure joy and pure love and pure bliss. Some people use psychedelics to get there, and that's fine. You can get there with good meditation, with deep meditation. You can also get there and experience this true joy and true bliss. All I can speak from is what I understand from guides and people that I bring through, and they are in a state of love. They are in a state of love. And the most common thing people ask me is, are my loved ones okay as, they cross? And that is the most common question. I just need to know they're okay. And I can tell you, almost as you, and Mary again might, or Craig might talk to this as well, or speak to this, as they move through, the physical part of them has left, the physical pain has left. So they move through sort of as a clean slate and washed, if you like, washed of fear, washed of pain, washed of suffering, that you just don't transcend or bring this with you as you cross, is my experience. Yeah.
So I did a series. Right, I did a series called Death and Back, where I interviewed about a dozen near-deathers and what they went through, and we specifically talked about the healing room when you transition. If you have a really heavy duty trauma, like you're at war, all your comrades are cut up, and you're going to go through this healing room because they want to, like you said, condition and get you cleansed of all that stuff. And so that's something that I kept hearing reoccurring. Now, they're not all of them. Not all of them went through this. Like Princess Diana, I know this isn't the Death and Back experience. She said she didn't even look back at the wreckage of the car. She was gone, and that's a very common thing. They're just like, they know what they're doing. They've done this a million times, and they know they're on the trajectory to go home, and they go right to the light. And then there are others that linger a little bit and need a little assistance. And I know in Death and Back, I can't remember for what her name was. She had cancer and she came back healed, which was miraculous.
Anita Morjani.
Yes.
Julie's nodding.
There's a lot of healing rooms that you can go through, and that helps you get rid of all of that residue and all of that ego. All that egoic, me, this thing. And it's like, and so what what I think, which was really interesting with the death and backers, was that we're all one. And we just get hung up in this separation, and it's just like you're communicating to someone. Well, you're also communicating, and that was something the Arcturians taught me. Was that I was going to do a spirit box or spirit radio with Arcturians, and they came to me, which I didn't know anything about them. They came to me, and I was like, I have to pick a voice. I need someone as a voice. Should I use a male or female? What would be preference? And then I said, who am I going to speaking with? And they said, you're going to be speaking with us and you. You are us. And it just was like, oh my gosh, it's so hard for us to wrap our head around this idea that we are not separated. And that's one thing that Julie and I are trying to do, is to help people here to understand, I'm just another you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just so that's why I have to be kind and compassionate with you, because you are just another me.
Yep.
We're all God.
Yes. Yeah, we're one. The conversations, when I was a young girl, I read the Conversation with God books, and that was the message for me that was hammered in. There's only one of us in the room. There's only one of us. There's only one of us. There's only one of us. We're all the same. There's only one of us. And the other message was, you're in the room to heal the room. It's the only reason you're in the room. So that really spoke to me as a healer. When I think that I'm going to the supermarket to get, or where I'm going anywhere to get, like as a medium, you'll know this too, like we're all mediums, but often when Spirit's talking to you all the time, you think that you're buying your fruit and veg, and yet like you're getting messages from Spirit to tell that person this. And, I was in the supermarket line once where a woman had lost her purse. And I said to the guides, oh, God, let's put her out of her misery, because she's panicked and she's running around the supermarket. I've lost my purse. And I said, put her out of her misery. Tell me where her purse is. And they said, it's in the bottom of her basket. She's looked a million times, but she just can't see it. So I'm like, excuse me, it's in the bottom of your basket. And she found it. And then she said, how did you know? And I said, oh, I could see it. I didn't tell her. What were you going to say, Craig? There's Mary.
Oh, no, I can't remember exactly what it was.
Okay, here's a question for you, and all of you can answer, because you mentioned the Arcturians. How do our galactic brothers and sisters, or a galactic family, or the Star Nation mob, dovetail with understanding the afterlife?
Jen, because one thing I think we don't sort of understand is that heaven is actually a real, tangible and physical space in the universe. So it's another area of the universe that is out there, that does actually exist in a physical realm in some way, but it is so far beyond our galaxy or our understanding. So I think that's how, in a sense, it ties in. It's another tangible, real space that we go to within the universe.
People have called it dimensions, that they live in the, we're in the third dimension, they live in the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension.
Like Julie and I, we've been communicating with Lemurians and the Palladians, and they're all great, teachers, of how they were able to take their culture, their reality to out of a third dimensional perspective. And that's been such a good thing for us to help us understand where we're headed,
Absolutely.
The only thing that I have been shown by a Pleiadian, who called themselves Vessel. As I said, how do I address you? I'm Vessel. That's all I am. Is that I understood in an experiential way, as I was shown. It's something, you're right, Craig, it's so difficult to wrap your head around. Our human minds don't conceptualize these things, but I experienced through them that we have always been here. We've never been anywhere else. There was this sense of the eternity of me, and it was just so profound that we've never been anywhere else. We're here. We've always been here, and we will always be here. It is something I think Julie alluded to earlier. It's something you need to experience. It's very hard to conceptualize and explain. Right?
Yeah.
But
Well, the Australian First Nation people, we've called them the Aboriginals, but Stephen Strong told me not to call them the Aboriginals because ab means not, so like abnormal. So it would say you're not the originals. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. So I usually call them the originals or the First Nation or Indigenous. But somebody pointed out that if you're born in a country, you're Indigenous to it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Anyway, they have always spoken to the Palladians. They call them the sisters. How many sisters are there? Six? Mary,
seven sisters.
Seven sisters.
Seven.
Yeah, and they talk about them being a part of the creation story of planet Earth. And yeah, like you say, they've always been here. They're not coming to Earth. They created Earth. Jill, there's Jill. Hi, Jill. I love that. I don't know which part that you loved, but I'm saying hi to you anyway. Yeah, so they are a part of our evolutionary journey, like you say, Craig, that or Julie, that they're teaching us to move past the third dimension into another dimension.
Yes.
When I was younger, I was speaking to the masters and the angels, and then the galactics came in, and I'm like, why do I want to speak to aliens when I could speak to, Jesus or Buddha? And then they said to me, well, we're physically incarnated in another society, living our lives with a different consciousness. Wouldn't you like to, to learn from us, like how we evolved and how we did that? And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when I was at that. Sorry, Mary, go on.
No, you go.
We're all talking at once. We'll go. I think Julie piped in, and then we'll go. Mary,
go ahead.
Julie, what were you going to say, Diane? Oh, Mary's gone.
What's interesting about when you bring in the extra dimensionals is that when you do start conversing with them, when you communicate with them, you almost feel as if you experienced it too. And that is helping us shift from dimensional to multi-dimensional. So I think that their piece with the afterlife is they're helping us see that it is multi-dimensional, that we are multifaceted, that we break through that linear thinking and go into the geometrical shapes of there's more to things than what meets the eye. It breaks from linear to multidimensionality. So that's why they're coming in. And that's why when they speak to you, they're really merging with that no separation. Because when they come in, when I have an experience with them, which my son Dakota also showed me, that's the other thing I know it's real, is he showed me one of the star planets that I had never read or seen in this reality. And then I went and looked it up, and it was a real place. It was a real planet. But he's the one who showed me when we were, in our telepathic communication. So he was spending time at this place called Asilon. And it's just so fascinating because whenever you speak with like the Pleiadians, when I experience it, it's almost as if it's a memory. That word, it's like, I think I've experienced it. But that's how they're showing us that we are all one. Because it's their dimension, but you're merging with it, and it's almost telepathic or intuition, the telepathy. So I think they're bringing that online in our bodies now, in our consciousness now, and then the fact that we're all talking about it is showing that it's thriving, that it's becoming real, that we're comfortable to say Jesus and Pleiadians in the same conversation. That's a big leap in evolution.
Absolutely.
It's huge. And like Paul says, he just woke up a couple of years ago. And what I'm seeing, I took a long time to wake up because I started asking questions when I was very young. But what I'm seeing now is that when people wake up, they wake up and they're ready for this conversation. It doesn't take them 20 years to think about is life after death real, and then 10 years later they can talk to dead people, and then 10 years later they can talk to Pleiadians. It's a short journey now. People are waking up and they're getting the whole banquet on one plate, so to speak. Yeah. So poor old Mary, she's been popping in and out. She's like the internet connection.
We're also leaving the third dimension and going into a new Earth. So we're experiencing a whole speedier. It's so fast right now.
Speedier. Yeah,
the way we are picking up things and the way we are if you think a thought, it happens a little faster. Before you could take your time and manifest it, but now it's like, so we as humans in this particular time, we need to be very conscious of what our emotions and our thoughts are projecting, because it's a reality super fast now. And it's going faster and faster and faster. And that's why there's some chaos going on, because people are, getting caught up in all this. And if we could just calm down a little bit and realize that we could use this to everyone's benefit, which is to, be very conscious of what we say, what we think, and what we do.
Yeah.
So the afterlife convention, we were going to potentially merge all these beautiful conscious beings, and even those that are perhaps sitting on the fence that are a little curious, consciousness will still expand. You will be more conscious after you leave that, even just a little, just for having an experience of different healers or plant medicine, or listening to some of the talks. And that was also Paul's philosophy about growing consciousness on the planet. We can grow mass consciousness by holding high vibrations in these forums. So so important for us to be out there in that.
I see Dr. Tony Riley is listening to this. Hi, Dr. Tony, and she's also someone speaking at the event. Paul?
Yes, that's right. Tony's one of Australia's most renowned past life regression therapists. And so she's sort of discussing how your past lives affect you now, and the effect that these past lives, have on every one of us today. So once you start, as I said, once you start looking into the depth of the knowledge that's available these days, everything starts to make sense when it's all linked. When you start linking here to the afterlife and then back again. So when you're in the afterlife, you have lives between lives, which is another person, Peter Smith, who talks about consciousness. And
Pete Smith is going to talk as well. Yep. We had Pete on the show.
Yes, so he and Michael Newton Institute 30 years or something, and it's all based with case studies all around the world. It's not just people's opinions with the things that we're presenting. So we have so many doctors and things like that. So our sort of theme to it is where spirit meets science, because we're also trying to put as much scientific relevance and evidence to support the theories that we're presenting to people. And they're sort of more than theories. There's much more to them than that. And so just opening people's eyes to that. So going back to Tony, she's just so incredible. She trained in the Arthur Findlay College and with Brian Weiss. So
Dr.
extremely
Brian Weiss,
and so
many lives, many masters was his book. One of his books, wasn't it?
Yeah,
great book. Because he was like, he put it on the map, and Michael Newton put it on the map. Like 20, 30 years ago, somebody asked me to read Michael Newton's books, but they gave me the name. It was before the internet. Said, you got to read this book, A Journey of Souls. And I went to a bookshop and I said, I've got to buy a book about journeys and souls. I couldn't remember the name of it. And they gave me another book, which was The Soul's Journey by a man called Peter Richelieu. I think that was his pen name. That his brother had died in the war, and this Indian man with a turban came to his house and said, I'm going to take you to meet your brother. And he said, I've just found out my brother's died. And he said, yeah, I'll come back tonight and I'll take you to meet your brother. Wow. And he came back in his astral form and took Peter out in his astral form and took him to where his brother was in another dimension, and then took him to a few different other dimensions. He went down to the elemental world, and it was a fascinating book. And even though it was the wrong book, I was trying to get Michael Newton's book. It was one of the most fascinating books. I could talk endlessly. And then I eventually got Michael's books and read all Michael's books as well. But Nicole Gruel, who is a friend of mine, who she attempted to start IAMS here in Sydney, and I used to attend the meetings then, and then COVID knocked that out. She's also speaking.
Fabulous.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah,
fabulous.
Yeah. So what she is doing is she's our last speaker of the day. That incorporates everything that's been presented to everyone, and she sort of lets you know how to incorporate all this into your life now, so that you're living the best life now, and understanding where you're heading, and hopefully what your authentic you is supposed to be here for, and your journey. She's amazing.
And Paul's put me on the circuit as well. I don't know where you've put me, but I'm going to be speaking as well.
So we have two sections to this event. One's called the Afterlife Summit, which we try to explain what the afterlife is, and all the facets of it. So it starts with consciousness, and we have a professor that talks about out-of-body experiences, because that's how the relationship to leaving the body and consciousness can be verified here scientifically. So she's a professor. So we start with consciousness, and then we start going into the near-death experiences. We have Dr. Michael Visser, who's a medical doctor, and he explains all about the NDEs. He was head of Near-Death Experience Australia for a while. Then we do Tony Riley, of course, the past lives. Pete Smith with consciousness and lives between lives. And then we'll go into incredible mediums. Ezio De Angelis, who's one of Australia's best mediums, he talks about the soul's epic journey. Why are we here? What is the soul? What is the purpose of the soul? Then Florence King, another incredible medium, like Love Never Dies, and she connects people with love and explains that, this never dies. And then, of course, Mary, she'll be talking about children with gifts and how people can grow their gifts. And Mirella, she's also there.
I'm also there.
As, explaining mediumship and connecting.
How I and I think we alluded to it earlier, that it is our innate factory settings. It's our default factory settings. We are all intuitive. We can all be our own mediums, and it's not something that people are uniquely gifted with. It's available to us all. So
that's a one-day event. It repeats over 3 days, and Nicole Gruhl finishes it off with how to bring it all together, and then we have a Q&A with everyone for about 90 minutes where questions are answered that won't. So then we have the expo as well, where we have a lot of practitioners in various modalities of healing and products and things like that, and that are just the best. We've sort of vetted the amount of people that we had, so that we got high quality people that are the best in the industries. And we end up creating an exhibition stage as well that's now turned into 2 stages. And we have I think we've got over 30 speakers talking at these 2 stages over the exhibition as well, presenting all new modalities of healing. And this has been such an eye-opening thing to me, because there's so much going on in so many different areas that it just keeps coming forward. People keep coming to us, like they're guided to us, and so we're just the presenters of what Spirit is asking us to present to people. And so I've been setting the timetable. So after speaking with you recently, I've got you into our timetable as well. We'll be discussing later what you'll be talking about, but it's going to be fascinating.
So we're the Spirit ambassadors for this event. I think that's the best way to frame us, is we're just Spirit ambassadors. We'll just put it together and let the brilliant minds come out and showcase what they do and unite people, in that way. So
have you ever I don't know if Paul has, but I'm sure Mirella have been to the Mind Body Spirit in Sydney. That's
I read it at the MBS. I read it, and it's a great.
You read it at the MBS. I just find it like a gift shop, and I've been disappointed about it, because it's like the purchasing power gets kind of loses the you know, what you're learning, because there's so many things to buy. It's like this massive.
Correct.
And I just have been disappointed with it. I know many people that go there that are amazing, that speak there and sing there. But I went there recently. I hadn't been for years, but I went there recently. I'm like, maybe it's evolved and it's fabulous now. And I just found it wasn't. I'm like, God,
it has changed. Like in the early days of the Mind Body Spirit, we had Hay House that ran it, and we had Deepak Chopra, and we had some really great.
Yep, I know. I used to go.
Great speakers. Wayne Dyer was there. We had some great speakers, and it kind of just moved a little bit more commercial. So we were very conscious that we were going to keep this as keep the integrity. Keep the integrity here.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time. It's gone so quickly. Sorry, Mary's been popping in and out. Her internet's just not happening for her. I want to thank you all so much for coming on the show. It's been an afterlife party here today. There's not only all of us online, there's been a big mob in spirit that have been like cheering us on and really loving this conversation. And people listening, I want to say thank you for everyone that's been listening. And for people that are in Sydney in September or want to come to Sydney in September, maybe you're on the other side of the world, or maybe you're somewhere around Australia, what can you offer them, Paul? As you know, what can you offer my listeners to come to the event?
So everything's available through Ticketek, who are handling all our bookings. We're offering all your readers 33% off our Expo tickets and 20% off our Summit tickets. So if they go to the Ticketek website, they can get all the details there. The event's on the 6th to the 8th of September at the Hordern Pavilion in Sydney. And it's with the Summit ticket, it also includes like a 3-day super pass to the Expo as well, so that not only can they see these incredible speakers and learn everything, but then they've got a couple of days to go out and visit mediums or learn about new healing modalities or purchase products and, you know, different things that are available to people. We've just got just such an incredible, you know, group that have come to us and that have made this event so amazing.
Yeah, I think I can't wait. I think it's going to be so much fun. I can't wait because, you know, I've been doing events like this online for years, but Spirit has been telling me to come together physically, to create that connection physically. I've got connections all over the world on like this, but it's really lovely to have that physical connection too. And there's something about it, you know, where one or more come together in my name being love. And it exponentially expands the light. And it's going to be fantastic. Thanks, Diane. Diane saying thank you all. Fascinating conversation. Thank you, honey one. I wish you were down under. Diane's in the States. Come down in September. Get my tribe down here from the States. Come down. Come to the Afterlife convention. So quickly, do you want to just tell, we've got 2 minutes to go, tell people, Craig and Julie, where people can find you, what you're doing, and Mirella, and if Mary can stay online.
Well, I think it's all our stuff is on YouTube, of course. And
what's your channel called? Life to Afterlife.
Life to Afterlife. Spirituality series, and a lot of the movies are there, and everything is free on YouTube. Otherwise, you can go to Tubi or Amazon and watch the content there.
Oh, you've got it on Tubi. Fantastic.
Yeah, Tubi's really come a long way. So we've really excited about Tubi. They've really spread the message, and it doesn't take much to shift this consciousness with the light. So
for people listening, Tubi is a free internet TV channel, kind of like a Netflix, but it's free. But I think you've got to put up with ads. But we've got Mirella quickly, because we've only got 1 minute left. Where can people
Mirella
find
Psychic Medium. I'm in Sydney, Evolving Soul Healer, private readings, events, classes. You can find me on my website.
Yeah, and Mary runs the Mary King Institute. I think it's marykinginstitute.com.
Mary King Institute. Yep.
She's amazing.
She's an amazing medium and healer.
And if people want to check out the convention, what is the website, Paul?
www.theafterlifeconvention.com. We're also on Instagram and Facebook, which Afterlife.
The Afterlife Convention.
Convention.com. Yeah.
We're everywhere. Well, we'll have a few more chats before.
ask Paul, right? I have to ask her.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know where it is.
I'm not a social media person.
Thank
We
you,
got to go.
Karen.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank
everyone.
you all.
Lovely to-
Thank you.
Thank you for the
See you
time.
all. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.